The day humanity finally reached the galactic capital was supposed to be the biggest moment in human history. At least, that was what every news channel kept repeating for weeks. People expected huge celebrations, emotional speeches, maybe some dramatic music playing in the background. But when the human delegation actually stepped out of their ship and looked around, their first thought was something very different. They were tired. Most of them had been stuck inside a long-range transport vessel for several days. The air recycling system made everything smell slightly metallic, and half the group hadn't slept properly. So when the landing doors opened and a bright blue glow washed over the floor, the humans blinked, stretched their backs, and looked around the way travelers do when they arrive too early for a vacation interested, but not amazed. The galactic capital was known across thousands of star systems as the most impressive achievement in the Empire. Floating towers, shifting walkways, and alien species from every corner of the galaxy moving around in a coordinated rhythm. The Empire expected the humans to gasp, maybe panic, maybe even freeze in fear. After all, this was the reaction most species had when they first arrived: shock, emotional overload, tears, or fainting. But the humans didn't faint. They didn't panic. One of them just yawned loudly. The Imperial welcoming team, a group of tall officials with shining robes and glowing patterns running across their skin, exchanged confused looks. They had been trained to deal with overwhelming emotions: fear, wonder, confusion, but they were not trained to handle boredom. One of the officials stepped forward and announced, in a grand tone that echoed through the hall, "Welcome, visitors, from Earth to the center of the galaxy." The humans nodded politely. One of them looked around and said, "This place is nice. Where do we pick up our luggage?" The official blinked. This was not the dramatic response they had rehearsed for. As the humans walked down the long arrival corridor, they took in the sights, but their reactions were surprisingly calm. The walls changed colors in smooth waves. The floor hummed gently, as if alive, and floating screens displayed messages in dozens of alien languages. Yet the humans treated it the same way someone might treat a modern airport back home unfamiliar. Sure, but nothing to lose your mind over. One of the younger humans pointed at a giant creature with 6 legs and a shell that shimmered like polished glass. "Look at that," they said softly. "It looks kind of cute." Another person held up their phone and tried to take a picture, only to realize the device was offline. They sighed and lowered it. Figures, no signal. Meanwhile, the Empire's observers, stationed on hidden balconies above, whispered urgently among themselves. "Are they calm?" one asked. "Are humans supposed to be this emotionally stable? Maybe they're in shock." Another suggested, "Maybe their nervous systems are unusual. If they are in shock, it is the most relaxed shock I have ever seen." A third observer muttered. To most species, seeing thousands of aliens in one place would be overwhelming. Some would scream, others would hide, and a few would pass out. But the humans simply looked around as if they were at a busy train station during rush hour. One of them noticed a tall, thin alien whose head gently floated above its body, connected by a stream of glowing mist. The human's reaction was a curious, "Wow, that's cool," followed by a casual, "Hey, does anyone know where we're supposed to go next?" The escorts from the Empire stiffened. They were ready to offer emergency emotional support, blankets, or calming refreshments. Instead, they were asked for directions like travel guides at a museum. As they walked deeper into the capital, the environment became even more spectacular. The ceiling opened into a massive dome, showing the real sky outside, stars swirling like a slow river of light, and ships moving in clean lines above the city. But instead of collapsing from awe, the humans simply stared for a moment and then went back to talking among themselves. "It kind of looks like those space documentaries," one human said. "Yeah, but the resolution is way better." Another replied. Their tone was so casual that one of the escorting aliens nearly tripped over his own feet. The delegation soon reached the central plaza, a massive circular space filled with species from every corner of the empire. The air was filled with soft music produced by floating crystals, and the ground was warm, adjusting to the temperature of whoever stepped on it. Aliens of all shapes, sizes, and textures moved gracefully through the area. Most species entered this space trembling with either excitement or terror. The humans simply paused and then continued walking. A few marveled quietly, but none screamed or hid. One of them even let out an impressed whistle and said, "I wish Earth malls looked like this." The Empire had prepared for everything: panic, tears, emotional collapse. But they had not prepared for humans being underwhelmed. A few alien citizens approached the humans out of curiosity. They expected nervous reactions, maybe even fear. Instead, they received friendly smiles and casual greetings. One human even asked an alien vendor if they sold coffee. The vendor, whose species communicated, mostly by vibrating their body plates, pressed a button on their stall's surface. A translation bubble appeared, saying, "Coffee? We sell a liquid with similar function, but different taste." The human responded with, "Close enough," and bought a cup. They sipped it, made a thoughtful face, and said, "Not bad." Vendor was stunned. No new species had ever tried foreign drinks on their first day, let alone with zero hesitation. A group of Imperial scholars watched from a distance, whispering urgently. "Their emotional responses are far below prediction." One said, "It is possible humans have a different threshold for wonder." Another added, "Or they are simply not very reactive." A third said, "The theory was disproven seconds later, when a flying creature swooped overhead, dropping a trail of sparkling energy." Several humans jumped and looked up with wide eyes. "Okay, that was cool," one said. The creature circled them playfully, and the humans laughed and pointed at it. The scholars scribbled notes rapidly. "They are reactive," one said. "Just selectively." The journey continued. A floating carriage arrived to transport the humans to the registration building, but it looked so much like a theme park ride that a few of them exchanged amused expressions. They stepped onto it without hesitation. The floor became transparent, showing the glowing city far below, but still, none of the humans panicked. One human pressed their face against the transparent barrier, staring at the swirling lights beneath them. "You know," they said, "this reminds me of those skywalks back home. Except this one doesn't make my legs shake." Another human sat cross-legged, completely relaxed, as if they were riding a bus to work. The alien escort leading the group muttered quietly, "What is wrong with them?" Another escort replied, "Nothing is wrong. This is simply humanity." The Empire expected humans to behave like other species, emotional, overwhelmed, perhaps frightened. Instead, the humans behaved like curious travelers who had seen enough movies and documentaries to expect strange things. And maybe that was the reason. Humanity had spent centuries imagining aliens, writing stories, drawing pictures, and watching films filled with space creatures and advanced cities. When reality finally showed up, it felt familiar. The registration building was even more impressive than the plaza. It was carved from a single crystal, glowing softly from within. The humans stepped inside and looked around with calm interest. A few admired the smooth walls and the gentle humming sound, while others wondered quietly how the entire structure didn't collapse. The Imperial officer in charge walked forward, holding a glowing tablet-like device. They were ready for dramatic introductions, possibly tears or emotional breakdowns. Instead, they received a simple, "Hi, we're here for the orientation." The officer looked at the humans for a long moment. Finally, they said, "Yes, Of course, welcome. The humans lined up, filling out forms that floated in front of them. They poked at the holographic fields with curiosity, sometimes waving, their hands a little too much, and accidentally clicking the wrong sections. They apologized, laughed, and tried again. This made the officers even more confused. Most species approached holographic forms with reverence or fear. Humans treated them like touchscreen menus. By the time the registration ended, the Empire had updated several categories in their database. Under human emotional reaction, they added new descriptions: calm, mildly curious, easily distracted, and surprisingly hard to impress. When the humans finally stepped outside again, one of them stretched and said, "So, what happens next?" Another replied, "Probably more walking. These places are always huge." And just like that, part one of their journey in the galactic capital continued, not with panic, not with drama, but with human curiosity, casual interest, and a surprising amount of boredom. The Empire had prepared for every possible reaction from the humans after their arrival. They had medical teams standing by, emotional support officers ready with soothing tools, and even quiet rooms in case any of the humans needed to sit down and breathe. They truly believed humans were experiencing some kind of hidden shock. Why else would a new species act so casually in the middle of the largest alien city in the galaxy? What the Empire didn't understand was that humans weren't hiding anything. They were simply being human. And humans, as it turned out, had grown used to strange, chaotic things long before they ever stepped onto the galactic capital. The confusion began during the official tour. The escorts took the humans down a shimmering walkway that slowly moved forward on its own. The floor felt like a soft cloud under their feet, and the glowing symbols along the walls played a gentle melody. To most species, this would feel magical or even frightening. But the humans reacted the way people react when an airport suddenly updates its interior: mild interest, short comments, and then quick distractions. One of the humans, staring at a floating map display, said, "This looks exactly like those big touchscreens in shopping malls." Another nodded and said, "Yeah, but this one works faster." The escort leading the group nearly dropped the device they were holding. In their culture, the founder of their species had designed the floating map system, and it was considered a masterpiece. To hear it compared to a shopping mall directory was shocking, but the humans didn't mean it offensively. Humans just related everything to things they already knew, and this entire planet felt like a giant sci-fi theme park. As they continued walking, the aliens tried harder to get a reaction. They pointed out massive statues of ancient rulers, energy fountains that floated upward instead of falling down, and large crystals that stored the memories of entire civilizations. These were considered priceless treasures. The humans paused for a few moments, made comments like "nice" or "that's cool," and then quickly moved on as if they were on a tight schedule. The escorts whispered among themselves with growing concern. Do they not understand the importance of these relics? One asked quietly. It is possible they are overwhelmed and trying to stay calm, another replied. A third added, or maybe humans simply have unusual brains. That theory seemed more believable when the group entered the Grand Hall of Species. It was a huge dome filled with holograms of every known intelligent species, rotating slowly in a circle. Each hologram changed shape, showing the different stages of evolution. When past species saw this, many cried or sat down in disbelief. Some collapsed because they suddenly realized how small their species was in the vast universe. The humans. They walked around pointing at the holograms like tourists studying museum displays. Oh, look, that one has wings. That one looks like a sea creature. That one has 3 heads. Imagine the arguments. The escorts stood behind them, confused and a little overwhelmed themselves. To make things even stranger, The humans began analyzing the holograms like people comparing animals in a zoo. A few even argued playfully over which alien species looked the most friendly. One human muttered, "If I had a pet from this galaxy, I'd pick that fluffy one." This shocked the escorts so much that they almost stumbled. A pet? One of the species shown in the hologram was considered a fierce warrior race. But humans didn't know that they just saw soft fur. Empire assumed the humans were misinterpreting everything because of stress. They believed the humans were struggling to understand the scale of what they were seeing. In reality, the humans simply treated everything with the same relaxed, curious approach they used back on Earth. That misunderstanding grew even worse when the group reached a large sign written in glowing alien letters. The sign clearly said, "Restricted area. Do not enter." Humans, however, were distracted. The text didn't translate properly on their personal screens, and the glowing arrows pointing left looked more like navigation hints than warnings. So a few of them walked right toward the restricted doorway, discussing how nice the lighting looked. The escorts panicked. "Stop, stop. That is not a public section," they shouted, rushing forward. The humans froze and stepped back, apologizing. Immediately. "Sorry, the sign was confusing," one said. "We thought that arrow was telling us to go this way." Another added, "Maybe you should use a different color for danger signs." This feedback shocked the escorts even more. In the entire history of the Empire, no one had ever critiqued their signage. They didn't realize humans were simply used to warning labels being bright red or yellow dot to keep things safe. The escorts guided the humans along a more controlled path. They walked into a massive hall filled with glowing crystals, shifting energy fields, and floating platforms. This room was designed to impress. Every other new species had reacted dramatically here. The humans looked around calmly. One of them lifted a hand toward a glowing field and said, "Are we allowed to touch this?" "No," the escorts replied in unison. The human quickly dropped their hand. "All right, just checking." The escorts stared at each other helplessly. They were trying to protect the humans, but the humans seemed to have a natural talent for wandering toward anything interesting, even if it was dangerous. Not out of recklessness, but because humans were curious and often assumed things were safe unless clearly marked otherwise. The Empire then attempted what they called a calming protocol. This was normally used when a species was experiencing emotional overload. They dimmed the lights, played soft music, and projected soothing patterns on the walls. The humans stopped walking and looked around, confused. Did the power go out? Why did the lights change? Is this part of the tour? The escorts had no idea how to respond. The calming protocol had worked for thousands of civilizations, but humans didn't even notice it was happening. Frustrated and unsure, the imperial officials decided to try something new. They wanted to run emotional scans on the humans. Not a medical procedure, just a harmless pulse of light to check stress levels. The humans agreed without hesitation. They stood still as a soft blue glow washed over them. The scanner beeped several times, then displayed the results. The results made no sense. Human stress levels were normal, almost low. Their emotional responses were stable. Their heart rates were healthy. The device even detected signs of boredom. One official stared at the scanner and murmured, "How can they be bored? This is the galactic capital." Another official whispered, "Maybe their species has a very high threshold for awe." This explanation felt uncomfortable, but also strangely believable. As the tour continued, the Empire kept trying to impress the humans. They showed them shape-shifting architecture, floating parks, and giant creatures that carried cargo on their backs. Every demonstration was designed with dramatic flair, but humans did not react dramatically. At one point, a massive glowing beast walked across the roadway. It had long legs, bright eyes, and a gentle pulsing light along its body. The escorts stepped back in respect. One human pointed and said, "Wow, that looks like something out of a fantasy movie." Another replied, "It's probably harmless if it's walking around like that." The creature passed by and bowed its head slightly. The humans waved at it like they were greeting a friendly animal at a safari park. Meanwhile, a group of alien scholars hid behind a pillar, whispering while taking notes. "They show no fear," one said. "Are they brave or simply unaware?" "It might be both," another answered. By the time they reached the end of the tour, the Empire was more confused than ever. Humans were not reacting the way anyone expected. They were calm, curious, comfortable, and occasionally even bored. The Empire began to wonder if humans were secretly powerful, or if their brains simply worked differently. The humans, unaware of the chaos they were causing, were just being themselves, wandering, observing, joking quietly, and treating the most impressive place in the galaxy like an interesting vacation spot. And the Empire still had no idea that this was only the beginning. The Empire had already given the humans a full tour of the galactic capital, and by this point, most of the alien officials believed the humans were either extremely brave or unbelievably unaware of the dangers around them. The humans themselves had no idea this debate was happening. They were simply walking, chatting, and trying to understand how things worked in this massive alien city. Things became even more confusing when the humans accidentally impressed the Empire something no species had ever done on their first day. It started during the second half of the tour. The escorts took the humans through a series of floating platforms that connected different parts of the capital. These platforms hovered thousands of meters above the ground, supported by a network of invisible energy lines. For most species, this was terrifying. The platforms had no rails, and the space around them felt endless. One wrong step, and you'd fall straight into the glowing city below. But when the humans stepped onto the platform, they didn't scream or freeze. One of them hesitated for a second, looked at the space below, and said, "Wow, this is high." Then they stepped forward like they were crossing a glass bridge at a tourist spot. The escorts quickly tightened their safety belts and activated extra stabilizers. They thought the humans were taking a huge risk. But humans continued walking, casually, some even stopping to take in the view. "It looks like those drone shots you see in documentaries," one human muttered. Another replied, "Yeah, except this is real." Their voices were calm, like they were walking along a regular city balcony. The escorts stared at them, completely stunned. A few slow-moving aliens on nearby platforms turned their heads as well, whispering in disbelief. They thought the humans were fearless warriors showing confidence in enemy territory. The humans were not trying to look brave at all. They simply didn't think the platform would collapse. The real chaos began when the group entered a large building shaped like a spiral tower. This building was the Empire's security hub, a place normally kept safe from visitors. But the humans accidentally walked inside when they followed the wrong glowing arrow, once again mistaking a warning sign for a navigation sign. Inside, there were giant screens showing traffic patterns of the entire city, rotating maps, and dozens of alien workers monitoring everything. Most new visitors would have panicked at the sight of so much advanced technology and official authority. But the humans stepped in and said, "Is this some kind of control room?" The escorts rushed in behind them, gasping and apologizing to the security officials. They didn't mean to enter. They insisted. "It's a misunderstanding." The humans looked confused. "We were just following the arrow." But instead of getting angry, the high-ranking security official quietly studied the humans. This official had a long, shimmering robe and skin that glowed faintly like liquid metal. They asked the humans, "You walked into the security hub without fear?" One human shrugged and said, "We thought it was another part of the tour." Another added, "Your signs are a little unclear." The official stared at them for a long time, then made a note on a glowing pad. "Interesting," they said softly. To them, humans looked like beings who treated danger as inconvenience, which, in their mind, was a sign of great inner strength. The humans walked out harmlessly and continued the tour, leaving behind a room full of aliens who believed Earth might be home to one of the toughest species they had ever met. The next situation happened during a visit to a large demonstration chamber. The chamber was designed to show how the Empire used energy fields to move heavy ships and goods. A bright blue field stood in the center of the room, shaped like a swirling vortex of light. The instructor said clearly, "Please stay behind the yellow line. The energy field is active." The humans listened, or at least they thought they did. But the chamber used a different kind of yellow than the humans were used to. It was more greenish than yellow. So when the instructor turned around to adjust some settings, one of the humans stepped a little too close to the field, thinking they were still behind the line. The energy field hummed loudly, sending a burst of light outward. The escorts panicked and shouted, "Step back." The human jumped backward immediately. "Sorry, my bad," they said, raising both hands. The instructor ran over, expecting the human to be shaking with fear or drained from the energy pulse. But the human looked fine. They checked their sleeves and said, "Didn't expect it to be that loud." The alien officials stared at them as if they had witnessed something impossible. A normal reaction would have been collapsing or screaming. But humans simply apologized and carried on like someone who accidentally leaned on an electric fence, surprised, but not traumatized. Rumors spread through the capital within hours. Humans walked near the vortex and survived. Humans broke protocol and didn't even flinch. Humans are immune to fear. Of course, none of this was true. But the Empire didn't know humans were used to faulty wiring, loud machinery, and strange noises back on Earth. A glowing energy vortex wasn't even the weirdest thing they'd seen out later in the day. The humans walked through a marketplace filled with vendors from hundreds of planets. Strange smells filled the air, sweet, spicy, metallic, and fruity, all at once. Aliens of different shapes moved around buying supplies, trading goods, and showing off their handmade tools. Most new visitors would approach the market carefully, unsure which items were safe to touch or taste. But humans, as always, acted like they were in a local street market on Earth. One human pointed at a strange fruit that sparkled softly. "That looks interesting," they said. "Would you like to try one?" The alien vendor asked in a buzzing voice, "Is it safe?" The human asked. "For most species," the vendor replied honestly. The human nodded casually. "Cool," they said, and took a bite. The escorts almost fainted. The fruit glowed brighter for a second, then faded. The human chewed thoughtfully. "It tastes like grape and mint mixed together." The vendor's eyes widened. You are not affected?" "No," the human said. "Should I be?" The vendor shook their head, speechless. That fruit was known to make some species dizzy or overly excited. The fact that humans weren't affected made several onlookers think humans had a strong biological system. Within minutes, another rumor began spreading. Humans can eat anything. The humans had no idea this rumor existed. They just thought the fruit tasted strange. The last major misunderstanding occurred near the end of the day. The tour took the humans to a huge open space where gigantic creatures carried heavy goods from one part of the city to another. These creatures had long, strong legs, huge bodies, and glowing marks along their sides. Each step made the ground vibrate slightly. When these creatures appeared, most species stood still out of respect or fear. The creatures were gentle, but incredibly powerful. Humans reacted differently. One of the humans stepped closer and said, "Wow, it looks like a glowing dinosaur." Another said, "Do you think it's okay if we stand near it?" The escorts flailed their arms and shouted, "No, please step back. It is not safe." The humans stepped away quickly, not wanting any trouble. But the creature, hearing the humans' voices, turned its massive head slowly. Its eyes glowed softly as it looked at the humans. Then it lowered its head and made a soft humming sound, almost like a greeting. The escorts gasped. That creature only greeted species it respected. One human whispered, "It likes us?" To the aliens watching, this was unbelievable. A creature that had ignored entire civilizations bowed its head to a group of humans who had only been on the planet for a few hours. It was the final moment that sealed the Empire's confusion. In their eyes, humans had walked into restricted areas without fear, survived energy pulses, eaten unpredictable fruit, and earned respect from one of the greatest beasts in the city. But the humans weren't trying to impress anyone. They were just curious, tired, hungry, or accidentally in the wrong place at the wrong time. None of their actions were planned. They were just being themselves. And because of that, the Empire now believed humans were one of the most fearless, resilient, and mysterious species ever to walk into their capital. And the humans still had no idea how big the misunderstanding had become. By the time the humans reached the later part of their visit, the entire Galactic Empire had convinced itself that humans were a calm, fearless species who simply didn't react like anyone else. The humans had no idea this reputation was forming. They were just trying to understand a new place, stay polite, and avoid getting lost again. But in the eyes of the Empire, every small action looked like quiet confidence. Because of this misunderstanding, the Empire made a decision. They wanted to test the limits of human emotions, not in a dangerous or harmful way, but in a dramatic, show-off style that the Empire was famous for. They believed that if humans showed even a little bit of fear, the Empire could finally understand them better. And if humans didn't react at all, well, then humans might become one of the most respected species in the galaxy. The humans didn't know any of this. They were too busy admiring strange glowing trees near the main plaza, trees that changed color every few seconds. One human was even trying to guess the pattern. Blue, purple, gold, then blue again. It's like a mood lamp. Another human replied, "I kind of want one for my living room." The aliens nearby were shocked. The mood trees were sacred symbols of ancient cosmic storms. Humans saw them as home decor. The first attempt to impress or intimidate, the humans started gently. The Imperial High Council arranged a planet shield demonstration. This shield was one of the Empire's greatest achievements. It could protect the entire capital from meteor storms, cosmic winds, or even large-scale disasters. Normally, species gasped in awe when the shield activated. The humans were escorted to a wide balcony overlooking the city. Several officials stood proudly, ready to explain the importance of what the humans were about to see. A large countdown appeared in the sky, glowing bright white. "Watch closely," one official said in a grand voice. The humans leaned on the balcony rail, curious but relaxed. When the countdown reached 0, the entire sky shimmered, turning into a giant dome of swirling light. It spread from horizon to horizon, like a giant bubble foaming around the planet. The officials waited for the humans to gasp or shout or drop their jaws. One human squinted and said, "It looks like a screensaver." Another added, "Yeah, a really fancy one." The officials stood frozen, their proud expressions fading into disbelief. One whispered, "A screensaver? What is that?" The humans didn't realize the aliens were confused. To them, the shield looked beautiful, but they were used to seeing special effects in movies and video games. It didn't feel intimidating, even though it was one of the most powerful technologies in the galaxy. The officials tried again. They arranged for a demonstration of an antimatter cannon not firing it at anything dangerous, just a harmless blast into space. The cannon sat on top of a tall tower, shaped like a dark crystal surrounded by spinning rings. The rings glowed brighter as energy built up. "Stand back," the escort said, hoping this would be the moment humans finally reacted strongly. The cannon made a loud humming sound, then released a beam of light into the sky with a deep, resonant boom. The ground shook lightly, the air trembled, and distant clouds swirled away. Most species usually covered their ears or crouched down. The humans blinked, jumped a little, and then one of them said, "Wow, that was loud." Another human added, "Cool light effect. Looked like fireworks." The officials exchanged stunned stares. Fireworks? To them, fireworks were tiny toys compared to the power of a cannon that could carve through entire asteroids. But the humans didn't mean it as an insult. They just related everything to experiences. They knew bright lights and loud sounds. Reminded them of celebrations. The Empire still wasn't satisfied. They needed a demonstration that would reach deep into a person's emotions. Something powerful enough to reveal any hidden fear. So the Empire turned to the Emperor, one of the most respected figures in the galaxy, known for powerful telepathic abilities. His presence alone could make entire rooms fall silent. He could project thoughts, feelings, and images directly into someone's mind. Most species trembled just being near him. The humans were invited into a spacious hall lit by floating lanterns. The air smelled like fresh flowers, and the walls shimmered with patterns that flowed like water. The humans looked around, admiring the design. Then the Emperor appeared. He didn't walk. He emerged from a swirling light at the far end of the room. His form glowed softly, and his energy filled the entire space. The humans paused, sensing the change in the atmosphere. One human whispered, "Whoa." Another said, "Is this some kind of hologram?" The Emperor stared at the humans with glowing eyes. He raised a hand, and a warm wave of energy rolled across the room. It wasn't scary, just a gentle pressure, like standing in the wind. Inside, the humans' minds, soft images formed. Stars, galaxies, ancient memories of the Empire's history. It was a peaceful, elegant show meant to reveal greatness. One human blinked and whispered, "This is pretty." Another said, "It feels like one of those meditation videos." The Emperor paused mid-projection. Meditation? Videos? He slowly lowered his hand and stepped back, confused. His most powerful mind projection, something that usually made entire governments kneel in awe, had been compared to a relaxing video humans played before bedtime. The officials standing nearby panicked. Quietly, one of them whispered, "Did the humans resist the projection?" Another replied, "Maybe their minds are too strong." The third said, "Or maybe they're simply used to strange images." None of these theories were even close to the truth. The humans just didn't think the projection was scary or overwhelming. They found it peaceful, even pleasant. At this point, the officials began to question their entire understanding of emotional behavior. They wondered if humans had experienced so much strange, confusing, stressful, or chaotic stuff on their home planet that nothing in the galaxy seemed new to them. To test this theory, they decided to show humans more things that usually impressed visitors. They took the humans through a storm dome, where artificial weather systems created small lightning storms inside a giant glass globe. The humans watched the lightning dance inside the dome and said things like, "Looks like a science museum, and that would make a cool wallpaper." The escorts tried a gravity room next, where the pull of gravity changed smoothly as you walked. Most species found this room thrilling or frightening. Humans stepped in, lost balance for a moment, laughed, and then started experimenting with small jumps. One human even said, "We should have a gym like this." The aliens nearby stood frozen. They thought the humans were training. They whispered, "This species treats gravity distortion like exercise." Another demonstration was a sound wave chamber that produced harmonious tones capable of shifting a person's emotions. Many species cried or felt overwhelmed when hearing those tones. The humans listened quietly. One said, "This sounds relaxing." Another said, "I could fall asleep to this." The chamber technicians nearly dropped their equipment, but the last demonstration was the one that completely confused the Empire. The humans were brought to a massive exhibition where giant holographic beasts from different galaxies roared and walked through simulated landscapes. These creatures were harmless projections, but their size and sound were so realistic that they could make anyone nervous. The humans watched the giant projections, murmured "wow," and then started discussing which creature reminded them of animals they had seen on Earth. "That one looks like a huge lion. That one looks like a sea turtle mixed with a whale. That one reminds me of something from a video game." The aliens stared at them, stunned, their most impressive visual show, and the humans were calmly comparing the creatures to things they already knew. At the end of the day, the Empire gave up. They had tried everything: shield displays, energy, cannons, storm domes, gravity rooms, sound chambers, even the Emperor's telepathy. But humans reacted to all of it with the same attitude: curious, impressed in a quiet way, but never overwhelmed or scared. In the end, the officials gathered in a meeting room and said something they never thought they would say: humans are immune to grand displays. But the truth was much simpler. Humans had seen so many strange, loud, bright, or chaotic things in their own world: movies, theme parks, festivals, fireworks, technology, internet culture, that the galaxy didn't feel as unbelievable to them as the Empire expected. And the funniest part? The humans still thought they were on a normal tour, not realizing the Empire had spent hours trying to shock them. When the final day of the humans' visit arrived, the Empire prepared something special, not another demonstration, not another attempt to shock or impress them. After all the previous failures, the Empire had stopped trying to make humans react dramatically. Instead, they decided to learn who humans really were. If humans could not be impressed by grand displays, maybe the key was something simpler, something closer to everyday life. So instead of taking the humans to huge towers or glowing arenas, the Empire invited them to a peaceful district near the center of the capital. The area was filled with quiet gardens, stone paths, and floating ponds that drifted gently in the air. Alien families walked around slowly, enjoying the breeze. For the first time since arriving, the humans felt like they were seeing normal life in the capital, not a performance. One human looked around and said, "This place feels calm." Another replied, "Yeah, it's nice not to be surrounded by explosions or glowing beams for once." The escorts heard this and smiled in a mix of embarrassment and relief. They had been trying so hard to impress the humans with power and technology that they forgot normal life could be interesting. 2. The humans sat by a floating pond. Small lights drifted under the surface, glowing in soft colors. It looked like fireflies swimming underwater. One human reached out, touched the surface lightly, and watched ripples spread through the glowing reflections. "What is this place called?" a human asked politely. The escort answered, "It is the Garden Sphere. Citizens come here when they want to relax." The humans nodded, appreciating the simplicity. For the first time, the Empire felt like they had done something right. Not because the humans gasped or shouted, but because they looked genuinely peaceful. After resting for a while, the humans wandered onto a curved bridge where a group of alien children were playing with small floating toys. When the children noticed the humans, they stared in pure curiosity. Humans, after all, were newcomers in the galaxy. But instead of being scared, the children waved excitedly. One child floated over with the help of a small hover belt and held out a glowing ball. The humans exchanged smiles and gently tossed it back. The ball changed colors with every throw, leaving a faint trail of sparkles. Soon the game became bigger, with more children joining in, giggling and shouting tiny alien words that the humans didn't understand but could feel. It was not a game meant to test power, bravery, or intelligence. It was just simple fun. And that made everything feel real. The escort who watched the scene murmured, "They blend in so easily." Another official whispered back, "This is the first time I've seen humans look surprised, in a good way." Eventually, the children waved goodbye and drifted away. The humans smiled, waving back, and one of them quietly said, "Kids are the same everywhere." The officials wrote that down, fascinated by the idea. Later, the Empire planned something else, but it wasn't dramatic this time. They took the humans to a food bazaar, not far from the garden. Alien vendors stood behind stalls filled with strange dishes, steaming bowls of colorful soups, floating fruit slices, crispy grains that glowed softly, and drinks that changed flavor depending on how you tilted the cup. The humans looked around with wide eyes. They weren't scared. They weren't overwhelmed. They were curious in a very human way. One human pointed at a glowing fruit and said, "Is this safe to eat?" The vendor responded, "Of course. It is one of our favorites." The human took a bite. The fruit tasted sweet at first, and then refreshing like mint. They smiled and said, "This is good." Seeing this, the other humans tried different foods. Some dishes were too sour. Some were delicious. One bowl tasted a little strange, and the human laughed and said, "Not my favorite, but I tried it." The vendors recorded the humans' reactions with interest. They were used to visitors reacting dramatically, either screaming in delight or refusing to touch the food. Humans simply behaved like people exploring a new place. That normality impressed the aliens more than any reaction could have. After the bazaar, the humans were invited to watch a local performance in an open plaza. Perfect timing, because a group of alien dancers was preparing to perform a traditional dance. They moved in slow, flowing patterns, while soft music played from instruments shaped like crystal shells. The humans watched quietly, not joking, not comparing it to anything, just appreciating it. Their calm attention made the performers feel proud. By the end of the dance, one human clapped softly. The others joined in. The aliens were shocked, not because the humans clapped, but because they seemed to really understand the meaning behind the dance. One performer bowed and said, "Thank you for watching." The human replied, "Thank you for sharing this." Those simple words carried more weight than any of the Empire's grand shows. As the day went on, the humans were taken back to the main plaza for a closing meeting. The Emperor himself appeared again, not surrounded by swirling light this time, but simply walking in quietly. His presence was still powerful, but less dramatic, more approachable. The humans stood respectfully. The Emperor looked at them with thoughtful eyes. After a pause, he spoke in a calm voice. "Your visit has taught us something unexpected," he said. "You do not fear easily. You do not panic when things are loud or bright. But those are not the reasons we respect you." The humans exchanged small glances, unsure where this was going. The Emperor continued, "We respect you because you see the galaxy the same way we do, not as a place of danger, but as a place full of small wonders." The humans relaxed. One of them said softly, "We didn't do anything special." The Emperor shook his head. "That is the point. You simply lived. You laughed. You explored. You interacted with our people naturally. You treated our world not as a threat, but as a place worth understanding." The humans didn't know what to say. They weren't trying to make an impression. They were just being themselves, curious, calm, and sometimes a little awkward. The emperor then gave the humans a small crystal sphere, about the size of a pebble. It glowed gently in their hand. "This is a symbol of welcome," he said. "It means you may return any time. And when others learn of you, they will know that humans are not a species of fear or panic. You are a species of curiosity." The humans accepted the sphere quietly. They didn't know that receiving such a gift was extremely rare. Only a few species in history had been honored this way. When the humans prepared to return home, the citizens of the capital gathered along the walkways, not to stare at them like strange creatures, but to wave goodbye like friends, sending someone off after a long visit. The humans waved back, smiling, realizing just how much they had unexpectedly changed during their short time there. As they stepped onto their ship, one human whispered, "I still don't think we did anything special." Another replied, "Maybe being normal is special here." The ship lifted gently off the ground, rising into the shimmering sky. The Empire watched them go, not with curiosity anymore, but with admiration. And long after the humans left, story began to spread across the galaxy. A tale of a species that walked into the galactic capital, saw some of the most powerful and advanced wonders in existence, and reacted with calm curiosity instead of fear. They had not impressed the Empire by being extraordinary. They impressed them by being human. If you want, I can expand this story into a new season, add side stories, or create a complete narration script for YouTube.